Hi guys, welcome to season 1, episode 1 of the 3Preet Podcast. This is Amin, Harpreet, and Jaspreet, and we're 3 Punjabi American girls who grew up together in New Hampshire. So the way we've set this podcast up is that each episode, one of us will be introducing a topic that we're passionate about to discuss with the other 2 Preets. Since this is the first episode, we're also going to be getting into a little bit of our background. So I think first off, we should probably talk about why are we called the 3Preet Podcast?
Yeah, so we're 3 cousins with the ending of their first name as Preet. So my name is Harpreet.
I'm Jaspreet.
And then my name's Amin Preet, but I just go by Amin usually.
So that's why we are called 3Preet Podcast. Like that's just it.
Also, it's cute because it's like 3P, like we won 3 championships. And honestly, us being born was our parents' like greatest accomplishment.
Oh yeah, it's a 3P. So I think one thing that we should probably clarify is the fact that like we are all cousins. I think a lot of people might think that we're sisters, or especially when we travel to relatives' houses out of state. I know people have been surprised to find out that we're actually cousins and we live in 3 different houses and we don't all live together.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like that's so weird. You think they know? They're our relatives.
Yeah.
Well, they're distant relatives, not.
Ugh, it's fine. The only family members that matter is us.
And then, okay, so each podcast is going to have a specific topic. So the topic that I wanted to discuss today was Desi Names. So to get into it, Hassan Minaj was on the Ellen Show for the first time last April in 2019. And in what kind of later became a viral moment, he spent the majority of his segment correcting the world on how his name is pronounced. So I think a lot of the world knew him as Hassan Minaj, and he clarified that his name's actually Hassan Minaj. And in later interviews, he said that he saw his parents sitting in the audience and he just couldn't mispronounce his name in front of them. Like, he just had to say it correctly. So I kind of wanted to talk about that because I think a lot of us have that experience where we're kind of figuring out how to pronounce our own names. Like, we know how our parents pronounce it, and then we know how kind of it gets butchered in school. So did you guys go through that as well? I know I did. I'm going to get into that. But did you guys go through that where you had to figure out what the pronunciation of your name was or what you're going to go with?
Mine's kind of different. I can't really shorten my name. It's Harpreet. I could go by Harp, but I've always been called Harpreet, and that's always what I use when I introduce myself and stuff.
Yeah, I've tried to give you nicknames. Like, I think Harriet is the only thing I could ever think of, and I didn't like that nickname for you.
No, how about like, isn't Harper like your fake name that you give people when you go through like drive-thrus and stuff?
No, Harper's not something I use.
Whatever. I call you Harps. Everyone knows you as Harps, like my friends and stuff.
Yeah, I like that nickname for you a lot.
Right? Do you wish you had like a name that could easily become a nickname, or do you like your full Harpreet name?
I like Harpreet. That's what I've grown up with. That's who I am. It's not like I like Harp. Some people call me Harp. Some of my friends call me Harp, but it's not like all the time. They're so used to calling me Harpreet that it's just, I don't know. Sometimes I do wish I had a nickname, but I don't.
So what did you get growing up in school, like with teachers pronouncing your name?
So that I would get like Harpreet. I would get like substitute teachers putting like accents in my name, and I don't know where that came from, but you see my name on the piece of paper. It doesn't have any accents on it. It's Harpreet. So I don't know. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, they're just like mispronouncing it just because, I don't know, they missed the letters in your name.
They think the R is silent. One of them, I don't even know.
Did like any of them like ever get it right, and were you like shook if they did?
Yeah. like not in high school. When it came to getting into like higher ed, like college, like professors knew how to say my name, and I really appreciated that. But occasionally I would get like the professor that's putting an accent in my name or trying to say my name in an Indian accent, and I'm just no.
Oh yeah, I feel that. In college, I think people know how to pronounce her name a little better. I had an Indian TA in my organic chem lab, and she pronounced my name perfectly, and it felt so good.
Oh my god. Same with me in my like international business class. He was Indian and he like had an Indian accent. So when he said my name, I was like, oh my god.
It's funny, but you're just so happy that your name isn't butchered for once.
Yeah.
It's like so shocking because we're used to it. Like my mouth drops whenever someone gets my name right. I'm like, you mean you got it right?
Yeah, and like it just keeps like it goes on. Like first it's school, and then as you grow up in work, I've had coworkers ask me like, "How do you pronounce your name?" And like, my parents pronounce it as Aman, like with an Indian accent, and then I got Aman in school, which was just completely wrong. And then you guys call me Amin, which I think I relate to the most because you guys have just called me that my whole life. So I think it's a good combination of the two. So I like to go by Amin, but that's not technically like if an Indian speaker heard me say my name, they would think I'm mispronouncing my own name. But that's just the version that seems the most true to me. What do you think, Jess?
No, when you said that Indian people would think you're saying your own name wrong, that like hits home.
Yeah.
Because like growing up, no one called me Jaspreet. Like everyone calls me Just or Jessie at home. But then at school, the teacher called me Jaspreet. So that's what I like identified as like from I'm gonna say elementary to high school. Everyone called me Jaspreet. And then this one day I asked my mom, hey, how do you say my name? Because like I realized I've only ever heard like white people say it. And then she was like, Jaspreet with like a U. So it was kind of weird because I went from like saying my own name wrong, how my parents didn't want it to be said, to finally learning what it was like supposed to sound like.
Yeah.
And it's so weird. It's so weird.
Yeah, so do you go by just like does Jaspreet still feel normal to you or does that kind of seem wrong?
I don't know. It does not seem wrong. I think Jaspreet is the name when I'm in trouble I get called. So that's kind of like the connotation I have with that. And then obviously Just and Jussie is what I get the most. And that name always brings like warmth and like happiness to me because like whoever says it's usually like really smiling at me. And then in college, everyone started calling me Jazz and I adopted that name as well. So what I've kind of adopted every name that people have given me in some sort of positive way. And I feel like when someone says my name, I know what era of life they belong to.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like different chapters. I like it.
Yeah, that's a really cool way to look at it. So, I guess, do you think like we wouldn't have this issue so much? Like we grew up in New Hampshire, right? So, do you think like we wouldn't have this kind of identity crisis almost if we lived in like more of a Punjabi community?
Definitely. We went to Brampton, Canada a couple years ago, and everyone there was like all Indian, and it was like super weird to see because like we're used to seeing like all Caucasian people. And I feel like because they got to live with like their own people, they have a better sense of who they are versus like me personally growing up, I felt like I was half Indian, half American. I didn't really know which circle I belonged to.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Harpreet.
Yeah, I think that if we did grow up in more of a Punjabi community, I think that we would have learned a lot of things that we learned about being Punjabi later on in life. Like we learned Punjabi when we like the language as we grew up, but we learned how to write it and like read it later on, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that yeah, we missed out on some things. But I also do think that like where we grew up, we kind of learned to appreciate our culture a lot more because
Yeah, I agree.
other culture.
Yeah, we didn't take it for granted just because every little like tiny Punjabi thing just meant so much to us. Because like for reference, I have the statistics up. Where we grew up, it was an 88.9% white city, or it seems like a town, but it's a city. And then the other demographic is 5% Asian. Like those are the two dominant demographics where we grew up in New Hampshire.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys think it was more beneficial for us to grow up in like a mostly white area because America is so white, or do you think it would have been more beneficial to be raised in like more of an Indian Punjabi area?
I think there's pros and cons, honestly, but I do sometimes wish that we did grow up in a more Punjabi / Indian like community area. And then I also, again, I like the fact that we didn't, because I appreciate our culture a lot more from learning different things that as I grew up and stuff like that.
Do you think like we would even be the same people? I feel like a lot of like who we are is just determined by what we had to go through growing up and kind of having to find ourselves between like two different cultures. And like we have relatives in like Boston, which is only an hour away, and I think about it all the time, but if we grew up in Boston, I don't think we would have been even the same people as growing up in New Hampshire.
I don't think
we definitely wouldn't be the same people we are today.
I don't think we would be as close if we grew up in like mostly like a brown area.
Oh
I feel
yeah.
like we'd be doing other things versus us kind of like getting as close as we are now.
And do you think that's probably because like we didn't have like other Punjabi people to like understand our experience?
Yeah, I think definitely. Like you can't talk about like eating roti and like like I don't know, like little Punjabi things. You can't talk about that with like your white friends. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of my friends like want to learn more about the culture, and like I love being able to show them my culture, and I feel like that's a benefit to like growing up in somewhat of a white neighborhood.
Yeah. And some people like I read this, I think it was Humans of New York, and it was an interview from someone who lived in Pakistan, but she came over as an international student. And she said that like when she's back in like Pakistan, she feels so free because she doesn't feel like she's kind of like a spokesperson, I guess, for her culture. Like she feels like she can just be a girl. She doesn't have to be a Pakistani girl. So do you think like do you ever get that? Like you just kind of get tired of having to explain to people?
Yeah. In high school I would get a lot of questions like, "Oh, like how do you say this?" or like, "Can you explain like what this is, what this cultural like meaning is?" And sometimes it would get really tiring answering those questions even though like the even though the other people just wanted to get to know your culture, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What about you, Jess?
I feel like mine's the opposite. I've never really had people asking me about my culture unless they were like literally like my best friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when strangers like did ask me about my culture, sometimes I didn't have the answer, and that's what would make me like uncomfortable in the situation because like I didn't grow up in like such a Punjabi area. I didn't know some of the answers, and I feel like that was the only shitty thing about it.
Oh yeah, so not being able to tell them and kind of represent yourself.
Yeah, like I don't think I represent like an Indian person as a Punjabi girl as much as I should. But like I am like slowly learning more about my culture, but it's kind of shitty that it's taking me this long to like learn more about it because I'm only shown like white culture or whatever that is for a majority.
Yeah. And then for me, I've had this man, I remember he asked me, where are you from? Like, the typical, obviously you're not white, you're not from here, where are you from? And I
Where are
think
you really from?
yeah, and I think I was just so exhausted that day, I just said New Hampshire. And I knew he wanted more info, but I just decided not to give him any more info.
Yeah, I don't ever answer that question with what they want. I'm like, you're gonna ask me that properly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I could probably count it on both hands and both feet. How many times people have been like, "No, actually, where are you really from?" And I'm like, "New Hampshire."
You know what the shittiest part about that question is? We all grew up here. Like literally, like not from like day one, but Harpreet was born here, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And and I, we came over when we were super young. Like I was a year old.
Yeah, I was 1.5.
Like we did not grow up in India, but people like expect us to have like these answers and these like long things of where are you from, but we are from New Hampshire. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess like the other side of that is Harpreet. I don't know if this was your experience when you went to Vancouver, but for me personally, I thought that it was like, especially Surrey, it was such an Indian community that I felt like they were in their own kind of bubble, where I didn't really feel like a lot of them were kind of like us, where that they embraced maybe the Canadian culture. I felt like they definitely had more of like that Indian vibe going on. Did you feel that when you went?
Yeah, like where our cousins live in Surrey, that neighborhood itself, every one of those families were in their own bubble. Like if one family or household was from like the same like band back in Punjab, they would like talk to each other, but like it was almost like if you weren't from the same band, they didn't really talk to you. I
Oh,
don't know.
really? I didn't
That's
even
what
know
I
that.
felt.
that's insane.
Yeah. But then like our nieces or nephews, I definitely like feel the Canadianness in them. Like they definitely
Yeah.
embrace it. But I think that first gen is more of a bubble that I noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we're more not like diverse, but we accept the American culture way more than like people in Brampton do. And I feel like that's such like a big asset. Like haiku, we're like known in New Hampshire. Like it's cool that our family has had some effect in our town and that we've been able to like share our culture and kind of like embrace some of theirs for like a better understanding of like the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like with our family's restaurant, I read a review recently that someone was like, I feel like I'm eating in their home. So I feel like we definitely bring that like Punjabi spirit to the town we live in.
Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like you said, Jaspreet, Harpreet was born here, and then we both moved here when we were babies. And then, so just to kind of explain our family situation, I guess it's 3 families that live here, and then each family has a boy and a girl. So, Jaspreet has a younger brother, I have a younger brother, and then Harpreet has an older brother. Yeah, it's kind of weird how that worked out, right? Like, every family has a boy and a girl.
Yeah, that's one thing that I got to thinking about not recently, but like years ago, and didn't realize that we each had one, like each of the family has one daughter, one son, one daughter, one son, one daughter, one son. Like, how does that even happen?
Yeah, it's crazy. And then for me and you, Harpreet, our moms are both sisters and our dads are both brothers. So it's even like more related than just like one-sided. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, so a pair of sisters got married into the same like family of two brothers.
Yeah.
So some people think of it a different way, but that's not what it is.
So would you guys, so like with your experiences growing up in New Hampshire and then kind of just how you talked about like how we had to figure out like our culture kind of growing up and even now, still trying to figure it out, would you want to stay where we live, or would you want to go to some place that's more Punjabi, I guess, even in America?
Right now for me, I think that like obviously where we've grown up, it's comfortable and all of that, but I'd like to have a little bit more of our community around, not gonna lie, because it's kind of a topic that we'll talk about later on, but like dating wise, like all of that.
Yeah.
I don't know about you all, but like yeah, I would like to date like a Punjabi guy or something like that. So having people in our like community around would make it easier, because right now it's not that easy.
Harpreet single, hit her up. I feel like I'm the opposite. I don't know how to say this, but I would rather live the way that we've lived, just because when I go to more diverse areas, I feel like I appreciate it more.
Yeah.
And then going to like super white areas, I don't feel like scared or uncomfortable because I'm used to it. So I kind of like it. I would rather be in awe of diversity versus being like shook when there's no diversity around.
Okay, I see what you mean. Because now, like, whenever we go to, like, we went to Brampton and, like, we saw, I don't know, the uncles sitting in, like, picnic tables, just chilling, and it felt nice, right?
Yeah, the two brown kids on a lemonade stand.
Oh my gosh, I remember that.
Bro, we were just driving away, and Amin and I literally looked back and we were just staring at them because we've never seen that before. Like, it was so cool. And then
It's just when we were in Brampton all together for a wedding, when we just got there, like we would just see Punjabi, like brown folks everywhere. And usually here it's just seeing white people everywhere. And so like whenever we would see a white person, we'd be like, oh, there's a white person there.
yeah,
The majority would be brown.
It's definitely about, like, an alternate, like, reality to what we're used to.
Yeah.
yeah.
Definitely a culture shock.
Yeah, and even, like, the wedding we went to, did you realize what was happening at that wedding? There were 2 other Indian weddings happening in the same Gurdwara, which is like the Sikh temple. And that was crazy. Like, I never thought there'd be so many brown people that you'd be like maxed out for weddings.
I totally forgot about that.
So with Hassan Minaj, I guess like one of the things that I love about him is that he embraces his Indianness so much, even though he's like such a mainstream celebrity now. And like he's like, if you can say Timothy Chalamet, then you can pronounce Hassan Minaj. So do you think he's helping, like, even with his Ellen segment, do you think he helped a lot for like the generation of like brown kids, maybe that's already grown up and is like young adults now and generation going forward?
I think it empowers both like younger generations and older generations. Because I know when I was younger, when people would F up my name, I at first didn't correct them. And so like before Hassan made that cameo in the Ellen show, I started correcting people. And so just seeing someone like him empowering others to do the same, it's kind of nice to see.
Yeah. It just makes you feel really seen, right?
Yep.
What do you think, Jess?
I think his comparison saying if you can say Timothy Chalamet, you can say Hassan Minaj. I feel like when you put stuff in layman terms like that, people like a light bulb goes off and you're like, yeah, this can be done.
Yeah.
And he like definitely like I feel like started that movement, because like if I had to correct my name, I would like not. And like after hearing that, I'm like, you can say my name.
Yeah, like representation is so important. Like, would you have like, wouldn't you have loved if he was like your like celeb that you saw on TV growing up?
Yeah, like the only brown person we had was Mindy Kaling at the time, and like
Mhm.
seeing the wave of like Indian actors coming over is like insane now.
Yeah, like Priyanka Chopra is married to Nick Jonas.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Deepika, I don't know her last name, but she did like a movie
Padukone?
yeah, she did like a movie with Vin Diesel that was huge.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on his name, but like he's so amazing. But you know in Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, the old guy,
Anupam
Amitabh
Kher, I think.
Bachchan.
Amitav Bachchan was
Oh,
in
okay.
The Great Gatsby, and I was watching that in school and I saw him and I turned to my friend and I was like tapping her, being like, "He's an Indian actor! He's an Indian actor!" And she was like, "Stop! You're hurting my arm." I was so shocked. Like,
Yeah.
it's so cool to see him like here now.
Yeah, and didn't he play like a villain in that movie, kind of?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
played some like Wolfie or whatever. He was a villain. He was
He's a
great.
gang leader.
Yeah. And then I watched interviews and so many Indian people came just to see him in like that 5-minute like scene that he had. Like
Yeah. Yeah, because I read on they marketed in India that movie with like Amitabh Bachchan on all of the movie like posters and like covers. And
yeah.
he's in there for like 5 minutes.
It was the best 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I think they knew that if they advertised it just with him, the movie would get a lot of views from the Indian community.
Yeah.
And which it probably did.
No, it definitely did. Like finally seeing yourself like on a huge TV screen, like after years of like no representation, it's big.
Yeah, and like you said, it did mean a lot. Like for me in high school, that moment was I was playing field hockey and all of the girls on the bus were singing this song called Down, and I had never heard of it. And then I looked it up and it was freaking Jay Sean, who was a Punjabi guy singing it, and I'm like, "Oh my God, like all these white girls
Mm-hmm.
New Hampshire are singing this song by this Punjabi artist. Like that is so crazy. It was so mind blowing to me just that one little moment. And just now with all the like representation we have, kids must be like going crazy.
Yes.
Exactly.
Or do you think like it's the opposite side of the spectrum where like now they're used to it, so they don't like take it, like they don't appreciate it as much as we would have or we do now?
I think it's good that they don't appreciate it because it means that Indian people are becoming mainstream and that's great. They
Yeah.
don't feel like the discrimination and like feeling out of place that we felt, and that's amazing.
That's a really good way to look at it. What do you think, Harpreet?
I think that Indian people are just coming about. So I don't agree with Jaspreet's statement just yet, but I think they're just coming into like the westernized culture, movies and music. And so I think that they know how we felt and also like what Jaspreet said.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get into this more in another episode, but basically kind of diving deeper into the brown come up and like what that means for people right now. That'd be really cool to talk about.
Definitely.
I feel like Harpreet put it better than I did, and I'd like to say I agree with Harpreet's statement, and I would like to take back mine. Thank you.
Okay, guys, it's okay. This is what the discussion's for.
The answer is always Harpreet is right. Like let's just get used to that.
Sure.
Take the W.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a question. Who are your like Indian icons, or like your favorites?
You go first.
Mindy Kaling. Mindy Kaling will always be my answer. I actually said her as like an answer in one of my interviews, and I got the job just because I said Mindy Kaling. Like she's my queen.
That's crazy. I think I appreciate Mindy Kaling a lot more since Never Have I Ever came out. Just because of like how much that did for brown representation. What do you think, Harpreet?
I like Mindy Kaling as well. I guess that's a commonality between all three of us. I wouldn't say anyone from Bollywood right now because like I don't really connect that way. But yeah, Mindy, because she has gone through like the westernized culture, but also was able to kind of showcase our culture in such a great way. And I think that kind of empowers a lot of younger folks to kind of showcase and dive into their own culture.
Okay.
I think the other thing I really appreciate about her is like her team is like mostly made up of like Indian people and Indian women. And she's like so empowering by that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I think for me, did you say female role model?
Any role model.
You know what I'm gonna say, right?
Yeah, I was waiting. I was shook when he didn't. Yeah.
I just absolutely love Hassan Minaj. Like
I second that.
If there's one celebrity that I genuinely want to meet, it's Hassan Minaj. I love him so much.
I would like to say, if you look anything like Hassan Minaj, please contact Amin. Slide into her DMs. Like, she will marry you on site. Thank you.
That's actually not even a joke. That's very serious.
I know.
If Hassan was single, she would probably DM him every single day.
Bro, you're not even wrong. Like, I feel like you have done that.
I would definitely get a Twitter specifically for him and just try to get him to respond to me every day.
Oh my God. I remember you tweeted at Grant Gustin once because you thought he was cute.
I mean, yeah, Flash.
Yeah, way back when. Yeah.
So that was basically the discussion I wanted to get into today. I think the importance of Desi Names was something I wanted to kind of talk to you guys about your experiences, and I think just watching that little segment, it was only like 5 minutes on the Ellen Show, really kind of resonated with me in a way that, I don't know, I think about this a lot. So thank you for having this discussion with me today. And then Harpreet is going to end the show kind of with a look into what next week's episode is going to be.
Okay, guys, that's the end of today's episode. So next week's topic will be Black Lives Matter and how we play a part in dismantling racism as women of color. Until next time, Sat Shri Akal.
Yay! Bye.